I'm Justin Doucet, CEO of PowerWave. Thank you and welcome to our series where we want to share what inspiring leaders are doing to create the future now. And today we're with Matthew Lipscomb, CEO of DMC Bio, a fantastic company that unleashes the power of biology to make new products, preparing us for a future that is less dependent on crude oil. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Austin. How's it going?
Very good, thank you. What's DMC vision of the future and what is the problem you're addressing?
Sure, that's a great question. So our vision for the future is how do we make a more bio-based and sustainable economy? So for us, our approach is using fermentation as a principal mode of manufacturing and then making products more efficiently, more sustainably than they're made currently. So whether those incumbents are currently made from petroleum or whether they're currently made from outdated or antiquated, even bio-based processes. I think we have an opportunity to reshape how things are done.
We hear a lot about renewable energy, but not much about renewable chemistry. You talked about petrochemicals and oil. I mean, our vision of renewable energy is like solar panels and windmills. What's your vision of sustainability in the future of chemical production? Like, what's the windmill of chemical production?
People oftentimes think about the fuels that power their vehicles and airplanes and things like that. They're very real. They're very tangent, right? You can go to the gas station, put a gas in your car, sort of thing. But if you look at the vast majority of products in the world today, whether that's everything from the food that we eat to the clothes that we wear to the materials that are made up of make up our automobiles and homes and personal care products, it's all about chemistry, right? And so, the lion's share of that, or much of that, does come from a background in petroleum-based chemistry. And so we're looking at it from a perspective of fermentation. So, it's a different route to make many of the things. And I think what's important to remember is that there are actually a lot of products made by fermentation today. So some things people are aware of, right? So the beer and the wine, bread, that sort of thing. But it goes much broader than that, right? And if you look at sort of fermentation-based technology and engineered microbes, they've been used to make almost the entirety of all of our blockbuster drugs in the last 20 years, right? So it is something that can be done safe, it can be done sustainably, and it can be done in a way, where we utilize natural resources, and it can really sort of change the way things are done today, right? So I think one of the biggest differences in a fermentation-based approach is that it's much more amenable to sort of a distributed manufacturing world, right? Where if you look at a petrochemical plant, they're absolutely massive, the size of cities in terms of some of this crude oil refining. But that's, that has certain disadvantages that come with it. So if you look at a fermentation-based facility, it's much more in line with sort of the regional agricultural feedstocks. And you can actually make things much more efficiently in that sense, right? So you can imagine making things much closer to where they're used instead of making them and distributing them, nationally or globally. So there's just a lot of advantages to going this route.
Based on what you said, I mean, do you think in the future we could essentially biosource everything, like all the chemicals we're currently using? Could we all have them like biosourced, or there are limitations? Like, what's your view on that?
I think we could certainly do more than what we have today. I think, if you look at the petrochemical world, they've got 150 year head start. So we've got a bit of an uphill climb in that sense. But I think there's certainly the opportunity to do more, and I think in many ways there were some early successes in bio-based approaches, but there's been a lot of challenges along the way. And so I think we're sort of right on the inflection point where I think we have the opportunity to really make a difference. And now certainly with the pandemic, I think as a world, as a global community, we have the opportunity to sort of rethink how we do things. And it shouldn't be business as usual, because there are a lot of things that we can improve in terms of business as usual. So I think now is the time to push forward for that and really think critically and thoughtfully and intentionally about how we go forward with where we spend our federal dollars and where we invest efforts for the future. And I think this should definitely be a part of that solution.
You mentioned some obstacles. I mean, what do you think could accelerate this transition from a crude-based economy to a biosource economy mainly?
A number of different things, right? So increased, support at sort of the federal and national levels, right? So I think At least in the U.S., we get a lot of research dollars, so basic science research, and then there's a pretty healthy VC community that can do some translational work. But the lion's share of it is that it's just not enough, right? So I think if we're looking about how we spend tax dollars and how we can support these sort of nascent industries, it's no different than what was done with petroleum, and it's still done with petroleum, right? There's still a massive amount of subsidies and support that goes into these existing industries. And I think if we just have a level playing field, even compared to what's come before and what's still going on now, I think that will go a long way, to supporting the bio-based economy. So I think that's the other piece of it too. Is certainly in a world that's awash with VC funding that are looking for returns on sort of a 5-year horizon or sometimes less, it can be difficult to really get things done where you need to be planning not just 5 years but 10 years, 15 years, and how can you create smaller successes along the way such that you can de-risk as you go. So I think that's a large piece of it as well.
Do you think this is really something that will carve the next century, like to have more distributed processing, or how do you see that?
I think you will see that. I think the pandemic will only accelerate that. We were starting to see some of that before we were in quarantine from this, in terms of building out more robust supply chains and not being still sourced to single geographies and things like that. And now with the coronavirus pandemic, of course, it's only intensified in terms of that. And I think people will start to evaluate not just what's the bottom line price, so how cheap can I possibly get something. I think they will now start to factor in other types of things that have been historically discounted in terms of making a full-scale commercial process, right? So whether that's transportation logistics, or whether that's supply chain consistency and reliability, and whether that's basically look, how do we do things differently than we have before?
Right. Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing your vision, and thanks to our viewers for being with us today. If you like this interview, please share and stay with us for more inspiring conversations with leaders making the future now.